it's Luke and Sarge here, and welcome to another episode of the Young Professionals Podcast. Luke, who do we have on the show today?
Sarge, good question, mate. We've got Fiona Kerr, who is an osteopath currently working in private practice in Melbourne. Fiona studied osteopathy as an undergraduate immediately after finishing high school, which was a lengthy 5-year course. During her undergrad, Fiona gained experience in various environments, including as a sports trainer at a local AFL football club and as a receptionist at a private osteopathy clinic. Fiona completed her mandatory work placement at a physiotherapy clinic during her final 2 years of study, where she first observed an osteopath working at the clinic, then worked on patients herself once a week. Eventually, Fiona was able to turn her part-time receptionist role into an osteopath position, which she has been working at that same clinic ever since, once completing her degree. Fiona, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how are you?
Yeah, well.
Thanks
for coming on. Appreciate your time. So I think a good place to start for the people listening, and certainly for Sarge and myself, we kind of get a bit confused as to what an osteopath is and what a physio and everything is. So why don't you run us through what you do day to day as an osteopath, and maybe a few of the differences between the different disciplines?
Probably like the most common question that we get is, what is an osteopath, or what is the difference between an osteopath and a physio? So I guess an osteopath, first and foremost, so hands-on manual therapists. We have people of all ages from all walks of life coming to us with different musculoskeletal pains and issues, injuries, all of that kind of stuff. My day-to-day, as you said, I work in private practice, so I'm just in an osteo clinic, just having clients coming in 5-6 days a week. Different presentations, literally anything from a school kid that's hurt themselves at gym to a 70-year-old that has had a fall. So absolutely anything can walk through the door. I also am a Pilates teacher, so do that a couple of times a week as well, just to kind of break up the week. I think in terms of kind of the difference between an osteopath and the rest of them, it's really a difference in philosophy of treatment. So the main thing that sets an osteopath apart is that we have what we call a holistic approach to treatment. So our aim is to look at the body as a whole. So someone coming in with an ankle sprain, you're looking up through their hips, their knees, their low back to kind of figure out how that ankle sprain is affecting the rest of their body, why they may have had that ankle sprain in the start, and just kind of chasing, looking for the actual cause rather than chasing the symptoms. A physio, on the other hand, typically is a lot more rehab based. So I guess that would be the main difference, in that it's really tricky because, every single osteopath you see treats differently, and every single physio you see treats differently. So the main thing that I would say, people always say, who should I see? And I just say, whoever helps you, honestly. Whatever you find is helpful for you, follow that, because everyone's different, and I've probably changed a lot in the last 5 years, so I can't even tell you.
And did you appreciate that difference coming out of school and before you actually chose to study osteopathy?
Not at all. So I actually only found out what an osteopath was about halfway through year 12. I knew I wanted to be in the healthcare industry and wasn't sure I wanted to be a physio, didn't want to be a GP, and I just had no idea where to go. And I stumbled across osteopathy, went to one open day at a uni and just applied. So starting osteopathy, I kind of had an idea about what it was, but I had really no idea, the actual ins and outs and how it differed. So
and why the interest in the healthcare space?
I couldn't even tell you. It's just always something that I wanted to do. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be in the healthcare industry. Initially, I wanted to be more like your doctor or your, obstetrician, that kind of stuff. But I then kind of transitioned more into the sports side of things, and then started thinking about physio and sports doctor, and then, just kind of landed on osteopath.
When we'll get into the kind of journey that you've come from school and through uni in a sec, but for people that are thinking about getting into any of those kind of related disciplines, be that osteopathy or physio or whatnot, practicing in private practice, You spoke about the people that come in and the kind of things that you do day to day, but what does your work week look like? Like you mentioned that it might be 6 days a week. What are the hours like? How's the workload? Is there a good work-life balance? That kind of thing. Can you speak to those areas of it?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, typically 5 to 6 days a week. I think a lot of osteopaths, probably a majority, would work at 2 different clinics. I think it's a lot easier to kind of split your patient base between 2 different clinics, just kind of breaks up the week a little bit. So a lot of my days are half days. When you work in an industry that kind of people have to fit around their work hours, your work hours aren't really conventional work hours.
It's like early mornings, late evenings.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So, on a Pilates class, I'll start, at 6:30, 7 in the morning. And then some nights you'll work until 7, 7:30. I even used to work until 8 o'clock. And then I think the most common thing is working the Saturdays. So, a lot of people don't want to have to fit their osteo treatment in around their workday. So Saturdays and weekend work is a really big part of the industry for sure.
And Fee, I think you're no stranger to working Saturdays because during your university studies, you were working at a local football club.
I was
helping out down there. How did you secure that position, and how did that help you transition into the workforce?
So I got that position, me and another friend at uni just stumbled into it. I think they were advertising on some university board or something like that. And it was just really local to where we both lived. So we went down and had a chat. I think I worked there for about 3 years. It was really great. I think I started there in my second year of uni. So in the second year of uni, you haven't had really any hands-on experience with any patients. You're just kind of learning the theory. So to be able to start that from my second year and really get that hands-on, start practicing my skills and just have that extra practice every week was, really helpful.
And did you find that helped you with your studies at university? Like you found that you were able to improve your grades and it really contextualized your learning?
Yeah, definitely. I think you learn something at uni, like a new technique or a new diagnosis or a new way of looking at an injury, and then I could go and apply that straight away, whether it was at training with people coming in for help or on the actual Saturday game days, people coming off injuries or wanting work, warming up and that kind of stuff. It was a really great way to kind of cement the knowledge and get that practical application from the start.
I bet the players were very appreciative too.
Very appreciative, yes.
And was that a paid position?
It was a paid position. I think only about 50% of them are paid positions. I have friends that were footy trainers at other footy clubs that weren't getting paid. So I was just lucky that I was at a club that did. You're not raking in the big bucks, but it's helpful to have something there for standing in the rainy weather on a Saturday in winter. But it wasn't much, but it was paid, yeah.
On that phase, Sarge and I both have our own experiences and own opinions on it. But with the paid versus volunteer kind of debate in terms of experience while you're at uni, what are your thoughts on that? Like if there is an opportunity that comes up that allows you to, as Sarge said, contextualize your studies and practice things in the real world, do you think if an unpaid position like that comes up, people should jump on it or wait until a paid position comes up and just kind of tread water until then?
I think it depends on how much that position is demanding of you. You touched on at the start the placement that I did later on in my studies, which was only about 4 hours a week, which wasn't paid. Whereas the footy training, it was 2 hours every Thursday, sometimes 2 hours Tuesday, and then, I'd be there from 10 till 5 on a Saturday. So it was a huge chunk of my week. And I think for me personally, if that wasn't getting paid, especially when you're a uni student and, you're having to work part-time jobs to kind of get the money coming in, if you're giving up that much of your work week, it is tricky. If you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can have, as I said, a placement for 4 hours a week or something that doesn't take as much time, I think that's not, necessarily needs to be a paid position. I think there can be a bit more flexibility there, but I would say it comes down to how much it's demanding of you, to be honest.
I think it's really good advice. And we can talk to more of the intricacies of what your course demanded to say be qualified as an osteopath in a sec. But let's kind of bounce back to, you're in year 12, you're figuring out what your application is going to be and your preferences. And I assume that you put down osteopathy as an undergrad. Can you talk through your thinking through that and what might have influenced you, what might not have influenced you, say through high school, and then how that process came about and why you chose the course that you did?
Yeah, so as I said, I always kind of wanted to be in the medical field. So when I was picking my subjects, I, made sure I had my sciences and my maths and all that kind of stuff. My preferences that I put down were a bit of a mixed bag. I had osteopathy first. I think I was talking about this with someone not long ago. I think I had like paramedics on there and midwifery and all this stuff that if I got, I don't know that I would have actually accepted. So I'm happy that I did get osteopathy. I think in terms of what influenced me to put that down, it was just research. I didn't know, I knew what field I wanted to be in. I didn't know what job I wanted. I did talk to my careers counsellor at school. I think they give out those books with different jobs in there under different sections and all the rest of it. I don't even know what influenced me to put it down. I just came across it one day, went to the open day and thought, oh, this kind of sounds like what I want. I'll give it a go and see where I go from there.
And what was the thinking there? And I think I mentioned it at the start that it was a 5-year undergraduate degree, and that's similar to other degrees like say medicine is quite long. If you get into anything in law or double degrees, they're quite long as well. Relative to say an arts degree or a commerce degree or something that is say 3 years, it's a relatively big decision to say I'm going to commit to this. So did that come into the thought process there, or was it more just this sounds good, I'll give it a try, and then if I don't like it, I can do something different?
It definitely did come into the thought process. The way they advertise it, it's a 3-year bachelor and then it was the 2-year master's degree. So I remember having the thought that, I could have a break after 3 years. I had friends that were going on gap years and I, had that worry that I was missing out on doing something like that. So I always thought, after my 3 years, if I'm not loving it, I can take a break. When I actually started the degree, you could have taken a break at any point, but it wasn't really set out that clearly. Halfway through my degree, they actually changed it from a bachelor to a master's to a double bachelor. So we didn't even have that clear break that I could have taken in that.
So what did it change to in the double bachelor? What were the 2 disciplines that you would have been studying?
So it changed to a double bachelor of applied science and complementary medicine. So they say that it changed, but in the subjects we did, it did not change at all.
Changed the label.
It just literally changed the label. So it didn't change anything that we did at uni other than the fact that we didn't have to do the research project. So I think in terms of doing a shorter degree, I did have exercise sports science down on my preferences as that I think it's a 3-year degree and then, you can kind of branch into a lot of other things. But my theory was that if I started doing something like that and then I get 3 years in and then do something else, you're turning it into an 8-year degree. I just thought, well, let's just give osteopathy a go. I'll get my credits and all the rest of it, same as I would out of an exercise sports science degree. But if it happens to be something that I love, then I'm already a year in.
Just to move forward a little bit to securing your position where you work today, you previously worked as an administrative staff member there, and that's how you got your foot in the door. How did you get that role, and what types of things did you learn doing that?
Yeah, so I was actually seeing the osteopath who owns that clinic as a client of hers. And she
was that strategic?
In hindsight, it probably was. At the time, I was just, dealing with injuries, but it turned out to be quite strategic. But yeah, I was seeing her as a client, and so she knew I was a student and we had developed a bit of a relationship. So she actually just called me up one day out of the blue and asked me if I was looking for work because our receptionist had just left. So I was very fortunate to fall into that position as well, that they just had one open up. I worked there for a couple of years. I think it was just really great to kind of see how the osteopath day to day was, kind of see their hours, see what they had to put into it, see what kind of clients were coming in the door, and chatting to them about it. All, obviously all the girls working there knew that I was an osteo, so I'm not an osteo student. So they, if they had any questions, they would help me. Sometimes I would, ask them questions about any assignments or anything I was doing at uni. But I think the main benefit was just kind of seeing what their week was, and just getting an idea about what my life would then be once graduated.
To that, as a bit of an extension to that, from what I understand a lot of the physios and osteos and whatnot end up either starting their own clinic, or like you said, you might run between two different clinics and you're effectively your own small business.
Yeah.
Effectively. Did you observe the importance of understanding how a business runs and thinking about those kinds of things as well, not just the thing that you've been trained for at uni, but if you go into this field, it's like, I need to run my own business. I need to be across the billing and the marketing and all that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, so that was a massive thing for me. Always being kind of more science dominated. I didn't do any business, economics, any kind of legal or any subject like that at school throughout any of my school or uni. We did one subject at uni called, I think it was Intro to Business, and we wrote a business plan, which was just pathetic. So I remember I sat down with an accountant a couple of months into working, and he started talking at me, and I just had to say to him, okay, I'm going to have to stop you there. What's GST? And he just looked at me and he said, okay, let's just pull it back a few steps then. I had no idea. I would say the amount I've learned from a business perspective compared to an osteo perspective is probably on par in the last few years. I just had no idea. So yeah, everything from what GST is to your tax returns, BAS statements, all these words that I'd never even thought of. So that was a massive learning curve for me. Most osteopaths in the industry do work as sole traders, independent contractors. So we are effectively, as you said, our own business. So we have our own ABN, everything that, we have to deal with our own super payments, no paid leave, no sick leave, all of that kind of stuff. So that was all something that I was completely unprepared for. So I think it's really important to kind of have that insight and, on top of that, get a really good accountant from the start. Absolutely.
And I think too that I'm interested to get your opinion. If you're talking to, say, a first or second year student who says, yeah, I really want to do this for my profession, would you recommend maybe getting a silly as it sounds, like a business 101 book and having a read through that, or talking to a small business owner and kind of understanding those requirements before you kind of come out of your 5-year degree and say, all right, I'm ready to work, but I don't know any of this side of the coin?
Yeah, I think that would definitely be helpful. I have a really great accountant that has just taught me everything that I needed. So I haven't necessarily needed to go down that path. I have other friends that, took the road of just getting the cheapest accountant that they could possibly get, and have had to do a lot more of their own research into, how a small business works. So I think either way you go down, it would definitely be beneficial to gain if you're like me and have zero idea, I think it would be definitely beneficial to gain some understanding, however you feel would benefit you more.
I think that's good advice. And just one quick thing there for people that are listening, say maybe students at school and whatnot, what fee, what you spoke about just then in terms of, you don't get any paid leave as a sole trader or a contractor, that kind of thing. The way that kind of works is if you go into full-time work or even part-time work, you get certain benefits from your employer, be they leave or sick leave and superannuation, all that kind of thing. But when you're a sole trader or a contractor, you have to look after all that yourself, and it's what you talked about in terms of the GST. Like if you're earning over a certain amount per year, then you have to withhold GST that you need to provide to the government and all that kind of stuff. So there's certainly some nuances to think about if that's going to be the path that you take, for sure.
Yes, it was definitely a big learning curve, that's for sure.
Before the show, Fee, we were talking about your views in terms of going and learning heaps of things and maybe not applying them, but learning them because you think or someone thinks it's a good way to signal interest, versus doing a few things and really making sure you knuckle down and actually get to apply them. How do you think that fits into the osteo landscape?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a trap that a lot of people fall into. I think there's this idea that, you need to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, to kind of be the best that you can. I would say, when you graduate from uni, as we've touched on, we've had 5 years of learning, hands-on practice, all kind of different knowledge that we've graduated with. I would say give yourself time to actually use that knowledge and turn it into experience. In your first year of treating, you're going to learn a lot already, and I think there would be a bit of a danger of overloading yourself. In my first year of uni, my first year of practice, I did a dry needling course, which I still, I use all the time, and that really worked well for me. But I have friends that did that in their last year of uni, as well as doing all other different courses as well, so that when they could graduate, they had it on their resume and they could say to potential employers, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. And they hadn't even treated one kind of real patient yet. So I think, just use the knowledge that you've been given already. Once you're confident with that and you feel like you kind of now need more and you're comfortable with what you have, then kind of look for more before you actually know what you're dealing with. I think there's a big danger that you can kind of learn too much.
I think that's a really good point. We might have spoken about this previously, just-in-time learning versus just-in-case learning.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, that just-in-time learning is better because you get to apply it and it gets solidified and you understand it, and then you can actually master that skill.
Yeah, I think give yourself time to, use the skills and be confident in what you have before you go looking for more, would be my advice.
And for the listeners, what is dry needling?
So
it sounds a bit scary.
Yes, we always joke that they need to change the name of it because you ask clients if they're comfortable with it and people hear the word needle and just freak out. It's essentially very similar in its application, I guess, to acupuncture. So where acupuncture is its whole, it's a whole treatment in itself, it's a whole uni degree essentially to Chinese medicine. Dry needling is the similar needles, but you're just using them into tight points of muscles and trigger point release and that kind of stuff. So it's just something that we use, along with our hands-on therapy.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
I've learned something new today. Fee, kind of bouncing forward a little bit more, when you eventually do become a graduate, so you graduate from your double, kind of pseudo double degree, and you come into the workplace, to become an osteopath, do you need to be qualified under a third party banner or something like that, or is it just you've got your degree and then you can go and practice?
Yeah, so you need your degree, obviously, first and foremost. In order to practice, I think there's a couple of things you need. So you need to be registered with APRA, which is the Australian Health Practitioners Registration Association, I think.
Go with that.
APRA. And within that, they run your police check, and I think you're working with children's check, or I think that's part of the police check.
It sounds like just the common stuff that you would need to be able to look after anyone in a workplace if they're under your care, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so once you do graduate, that degree in itself is enough to go work. You don't have to do any further study to be able to just work day-to-day private practice.
Yeah, right. And through the back end of your degree, I know that you did your placements in your second or third second last or final year. Is that to, gain a certain amount of hours that you need to graduate? What was that requirement based around?
Yeah, so in third year uni, you start observing. So they have a student clinic on campus where people from, outside of the university come and get treatment, similar to like hairdressing salons and all that kind of stuff, where they have those uni clinics set up. So in your third year, you observe the older students treating, and then in your fourth and fifth years, you start treating yourself. So that's a subject in itself as part of your degree. And in order to graduate, you have to have treated X amount of patients and done X amount of hours at the clinic. The reason that they encourage you to get an outside placement is that it's just a lot easier to get those hours. So when the clinic was set up, there was, maybe 60, 70 people going through it a year. When I left in fifth year, they had over 150 people in first year. So
people being patients or students?
Students, sorry.
Students, right.
So the amount of students really increased, but they weren't necessarily getting more clients through the door. So the idea of getting an outside placement is A, just to help you get those hours, but B, it also just really widens the experience and the exposure you're going to get. And also, working underneath another osteopath outside of the clinic is just, more experience and more knowledge that you can have.
And I think working with another osteo outside the clinic is also a great way to network too.
Absolutely.
That's another prospective employer, another person you can learn from.
Yeah, definitely. It's just another person to know in the field. I think it's all very helpful in the end.
What is the field like? Is it relatively small, like people know each other in, say, a city, so say Melbourne or Sydney or wherever you are, or is it quite broad?
It's getting broader. It used to be quite small. There's a couple of online forums and discussion pages where quite a number of people are quite active. So you do learn a lot of osteopaths' names, and there's some big people in the industry and that kind of stuff. I remember when I was in fifth year uni, so my final year, and we had kind of like an orientation week before graduating, and one of the presenters came and was speaking about, leaving uni and job prospects and all the rest of it. And I remember he said to us, there's more osteopaths at uni than there are registered in Australia. So in terms of growing, it's the fastest growing healthcare industry in Australia at the moment. So it's going to get a lot bigger in the next few years, and it already has been getting bigger over the last couple of years.
That sounds like a bit of an oversupply. Where does one end up if they do an osteo degree, but maybe they don't jump straight into osteo? Is there any other pathways that one can take?
Yeah, so I think that same guy that came and spoke to us at uni, kind of the main crux of his presentation was trying to encourage people to move interstate. It's a kind of both ways working in Melbourne. So on one hand, you have that we're probably the most, I guess, health-minded place. So
we're the most livable city.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Maybe not at the moment. I was going to say
not right now, but in the big scheme of things. So there's obviously a bigger supply and demand, in Melbourne than there would be, in rural Queensland or something like that. But on the other hand, exactly what you said, there is getting to that point of there being an oversupply issue of osteopaths. Because even though we are health-minded and, we want to have these alternative therapies, there's only so many that we can have before there is just too many. So I think they were kind of saying it to us, in fifth year, but they were saying that we're really hounding it into the earlier years, that coming into a degree like this, and I think it's important in any kind of healthcare at the moment, is to have in your mind whether or not you'd be open to doing any kind of travel, even if it's someone that I used to work for. When she graduated, she moved to country Victoria for a year to work to get experience. I know it's quite common in physio degrees to do placements in the country or to move interstate and then come back when you're more experienced. So I do think that in the health industry, it's competitive in any kind of job. So I think that if it is an industry that you're wanting to go into, just to have in your mind, you know, if that's something that you'd be open to or something that you've even thought about, really.
And just on that point, how in a competitive environment, how does one differentiate themselves in the osteo space?
That's a very good question. I think, as you touched on before, having contacts, knowing more people in the field, being known is a big plus. Not to kind of contradict what I said before, but having, you know, that upskilling and those different courses in the right time frame is a really great way to differentiate yourself from other students. I would say the biggest thing that you could do as a new grad looking for a new job is just to be really confident in yourself. I think there's going to be so many graduates coming out, and if you're confident in your knowledge, you know what you're talking about, you're confident in yourself you're confident in yourself as an osteopath, I think that would be a really big point of difference.
Let's put that into context of, say, we're talking to a second or third year student that is keen to get some experience, and they're super confident and really confident in themselves, and would normally walk into a clinic and say, hey, can I please have a couple of hours a week or whatever? But now they find themselves in lockdown.
Yes.
And maybe moving towards a work environment where it might be, you know, half online or something like that. We don't know what it's really going to look like. What advice, if it differs at all, would you give those people now looking for positions where they're a little bit constrained as compared to, say, last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tricky at the moment because obviously having another person in the room isn't ideal in a COVID environment. So observations like I did would definitely be hard. It's actually something that was posted on one of those discussion forums that I mentioned earlier. An osteopath was posting asking what clinics were doing with students that were asking about observations, and it was kind of 50-50. Some people were like, well, you know, they need it, so we have to supply it, and other people were like, it's not the right time, you know, obviously. So I think there's definitely still clinics that I know that are still taking students. I mean, all you can do is ask. I would say definitely still contact them, reach out, ask if there's anything they can do, see if there's any webinars going on for students, any observations, that kind of stuff. But I think just any experience you can get in the field, even if it's just, you know, going in for 2 hours a week or anything like that would be helpful.
Well, I think clinics would still need administrative staff, so there's still
Absolutely.
an opportunity there. It might just look a little bit different to what it has previously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the clinics are still running, the healthcare industry is still working, so jobs are still available. It's just reaching out.
And I suppose I'm not an expert in the health industry by any means, but you know, some experience in trying to get internship positions and things like that in my own kind of history is that if you can think a bit differently and be a little bit innovative with coming to people with proposals on how you can help them, even though you're not completely, you know, 100% skilled or whatever. Is there scope to do that? So say maybe breaking that problem down a little bit further. If you're not allowed, say, another person in the room, could it be approaching someone at a clinic and saying, hey, can I still observe, but via, say, Zoom, like get me up on the Zoom screen and I can see what you're doing in the room from home, or providing a solution to a problem rather than just saying, I can't come in the room. So that option is gone.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. I also know moving forward from that a lot of clinics are offering telehealth consultations. So, you know, essentially Zoom consultations, and that's definitely something that you could talk about with a clinic about whether you could kind of be included on that consult. Because, yeah, as you said, at the moment there's, you know, not really much else that we can do. So to kind of be innovative and think about ways that you can include yourself in the new ways that we're treating clients would be a really great way to go.
You can even sell that to the clinic, right? Like, you know, you can drive innovation, and you can be the one that's providing the experience to students for no cost. Just join the Zoom call.
Exactly.
On the telehealth point, have you done any consults via video, and how do you see that playing out moving forward?
I have done a couple myself. It's mostly just advice, stretching. There's not really a huge amount that we can do, being such, the way that I treat is really hands-on focus. So taking that away does take away a lot of what I would do in a consultation. As I touched on before, I do also do Pilates, so like a lot of clinical exercise, which I use as a form of treatment as well, rehab and mobility. So I do a few sessions a week with clients over Zoom, doing at-home clinical exercise and Pilates sessions. So there's definitely stuff that we can do, but I think moving forward, we're definitely more suited to non-telehealth consults, but
definitely,
we're doing what we can.
It's hard to be how do you describe it? Using your hands, a hand
manual
practitioner,
therapist.
Manual therapist. It's hard to be a manual.
We can say a hand practitioner.
It's hard to be a manual therapist when you can't actually see anyone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a big part of the job, isn't it?
With that, Fee, like if it's going to be a future of doing maybe half telehealth or whatnot, it would seem that you need to have quite a high level of EQ to deal with different people and trying to educate some of the time, I'd imagine, people of different backgrounds and different knowledge bases. A bit of context, like we used to work together at a swim school when we were at high school, and that, is educating a class of people who are completely different. Are there any stories from, say, that particular part-time job as a swim teacher or any other part-time positions that were a good training ground for soft skills that you're using now? And I guess a further question to that is, what are some soft skills rather that students can be working to get better at if they're looking to get into the field?
I do think it sounds ridiculous, but I do think that swimming teaching did help. A lot of this, I think the main thing that I struggled with when I first started working was being confident as the authority figure in the room. When you graduate, I think I was 23 when I graduated, and I really struggled with, a 55-year-old coming in with an issue, and I have to be the one to tell him what to do or her what to do. And I really struggled with that in myself, to kind of be, no, you're the health professional. You're the one that's done 5 years of uni. They're coming to you for help. And I think going back to swimming teaching days, yes, it's children and they're not going to, really talk down or talk back at you.
They did.
Parents
they did. That's very true. Dealing with parents was a whole different side of it. But that's exactly right. I think just knowing that you're the professional and not being swayed by kind of their, I guess, opinions or their thoughts on the issue, and just saying, no, you've come to me for help. I'm the professional. You've come to me to learn how to swim. I'm teaching a child how to swim. I don't know what else you really want me to say. So I think that definitely did help. In terms of soft skills, patient communication is massive. I've done, webinars on it. The Pilates course we did has a massive focus on it, because you have to be able to tailor the way that you deliver advice to different patients and different clients. So you have to kind of have a few different ways you go around things. The tough approach, you have patients who say, if you're not going to do this, don't bother coming back, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then you also have to have the people that you have to really work through with and be patient with, and then people that you're going to have to explain the same thing 20,000 times to before they get it. So I think just having the ability to communicate and change the way that you communicate depending on who you're communicating with is really important.
I think that's really good advice. And I think that goes to any profession. You need to be able to empathise and
absolutely
put yourself in the other person's shoes and really speak their language so you can get that message across.
And I think on top of that as well, don't underestimate the value of listening. When people are coming to you in pain, half of the way that you can help them is just by being someone that's going to listen to them. So listening and then communicating, something because of what you've listened to, and not just spitting something out at them, makes a big difference too.
Yeah. listen to what they're saying rather than you regurgitating any textbook that you might have read.
Exactly.
And on that one, what advice would you have for a year 12 student who's thinking about studying osteo?
Put it this way, is there an example that comes to mind of, say, a time where you were disappointed in an outcome, and some people might think it's a failure, and it might have been pretty crap at the time, but you've really learnt from that and you've grown from it. Is there anything that comes to mind from that thought process?
I think in terms of failure, my favourite failure, which sounds ridiculous, but my favourite failure would have to be just absolutely burning myself out. When you're a new student, a new grad, and you go for new jobs and you're kind of starting at the bottom of the pecking order, there's that, I think, that expectation that you'll kind of do the crappy jobs and you'll pick up the slack because you're kind of at the bottom rung. My advice would be to kind of put yourself first from the start. When you're working with people especially, there's that tendency to think that you kind of have to, keep giving more of yourself to help these people to a point where you just burn yourself out. I touched on at the start about the working hours and then working at two different clinics. So a couple of years ago when I was working at two different clinics, both clinics wanted, afternoon work. They both wanted Saturday work. They wanted late hours. And I was working till 7 or 8 o'clock every weeknight and working from 8 a.m. every Saturday morning. I did that for 12 months and was just absolutely so burnt out at the end that I had to take 2 months off from work.
It's not what you'd expect to hear from a 25 or 26-year-old.
No,
after their first
exactly.
year of work. Yeah,
exactly. So I think I just, there's also a really big mental load to working with people, and that's not specific to, being an osteopath at all. I think that's any career that works with people, or when you're in an industry where people come to you with problems. One thing that I had to learn was to not kind of take on their problems, and to kind of leave work at work and then come home and not be thinking about that person, that came into you and started crying to you because all this stuff's happened to them. I think I got to a point where I wasn't enjoying work, and I hated that because I really love my job. But it's my favourite failure in the sense that it forced me to create a better work-life balance, and I'm very grateful for that. But I know it's really kind of jammed down students' throats to not burn out, but you don't really know what that means when someone says you don't burn out. Because you don't.
It is a real thing. It can happen.
Yeah, because you don't kind of see it happening. You don't see, taking that one extra shift, or, taking an extra client that's called up in pain and then being there until 8:30 at night. When it's happening, you don't see it happening. And you just think, I'm just started out, this is what I have to do to get better in the industry. I have to work the long hours. I have to see the extra clients, but you don't have to.
I think that's really good advice. That's really good advice, because I think a lot of people talk about you always need to say yes, and if an opportunity pops up, say yes. But I think a lot of the time it's just as important or more important to actually have the courage to say no.
Completely. And I think that's something that is really hard to learn if you don't have that naturally. I mean, some people do. If you don't have that naturally and you're a people pleaser and you want to portray yourself as a person that will take any opportunity and, be really go get it, it's really hard to find that balance. And unfortunately, I found it by going too far. But, I think it's really easy to say, don't burn out. But unless you actually kind of know what burning out is, it kind of doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Fee. Well, thanks for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're very welcome.
I think there's definitely some good little nuggets in there for people that are, looking to get into osteo or anywhere in the health industry or any career for that matter, I think, and particularly the last part about, learn that it's okay to say no to some things and to take your time, and you've got a whole career ahead of you. Instead of just kind of jumping in and thinking that it's going to be at the end in the next couple of years. So plenty to take away there. And thanks for coming on, Faye.
You're very welcome. Thanks, guys.